Today we're going to be talking about topic 6, trigonometry. So we need to do a couple of things before we can even get started. First, I have to make sure that my calculator is in degree mode. So if I go over here to my calculator, there's a mode button. I'm going to press the mode button. Now, the third one down, I have radian or degree. Now notice my degree is highlighted black with white letters. That means that I have chosen to be in degree mode. So I'm here, so I want to get out of that, and I quit. So now back onto the paper. I'm going to write SOHCAHTOA on my formula sheet. I also am given this lovely picture on my formula sheet just in case I forget, as maybe a reminder. So what does SOHCAHTOA even stand for? Sine of B, and this is the angle that I pick, equals opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine of B equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And finally, tangent equals opposite over adjacent. So now that I know what it stands for, how can I use this with any right triangle? First of all, I need to figure out which acute angle I'm going to use. I never use my right angle. And finally, if I can't pick an angle, maybe I might need to use c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So once I've picked my acute angle, I'm going to have to label those things. I'm going to label my opposite, my hypotenuse, and my adjacent. Finally, I'm going to cross out the opposite, my C didn't get written here, my opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse with no information. Or something that's extraneous or extra. I'm going to look at the two sides I have left, and I'm going to determine whether I'm going to be using SO, CA, or TOA. Once I figure out which one I'm going to use that ratio and set up an equation to find the missing side or angle. So let's do a couple of examples. Now, here are my steps again, written out, and there's my triangle. Step 1 says I need to pick an acute angle. I'm going to pick 32 because 32 is the only angle that was given. I could find the other one, but that's what I'm going to go with. I never pick my right angle. So step 1 is done. Number 2, I'm going to label my opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. Well, how do I label my opposite? If I picked 32, and you can see I drew a circle around it, that blue circle touched the side of the triangle that had an X and the side of the triangle that had a 14. Which one did it not touch? This one over here, and that's my opposite. My hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. Same concept though. This red does not touches both of those sides, but it does not touch them with the X. That makes that my hypotenuse. And what do I have left? My adjacent. Next, I'm going to cross out the one that I don't need. So if I look, or no information, the hypotenuse has an X, the adjacent has a 14, and this opposite has nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and cross it out. Now, what do I have left? I crossed out my O, so I'm going to cross out everything in SOHCAHTOA that has an O. And what am I going to be using? CA, or cosine. So I'm going to be using CA, or cosine. And what does it stand for? Cosine of what? What angle did I pick? I picked 32. Equals the adjacent, which is 14, over the hypotenuse, which is X. Now where that X is kind of important. Notice that the X is in the denominator. That's in the bottom of the fraction. It's down. So what am I going to do when X is in the bottom? I'm going to divide to find my answer. So X equals, and I always start with the fraction, the number in the fraction, 14 divided by cosine of 32. And I'm just going to plug that directly into my calculator. 14 divided by cosine of 32. And what do I have? x equals 16.5. Now lucky for me, 16.5 would be my hypotenuse, and so far it's bigger than 14. So I'm just using some number sense to know that that's going to be my longest side. So let's look at our next example. Which angle am I going to pick? I'm going to pick 69. Then I'm going to label my opposite, my hypotenuse, and my adjacent. Once I do that, I'm going to cross out my hypotenuse because I don't need it. There's nothing by it. So when I cross out my hypotenuse, I know that I'm going to be using tangent. So tangent of 69 equals opposite over adjacent. Now x is in the top, so I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to get x equals, and I take the number in the fraction again, 18 times tangent of 69. And I'm going to go to my calculator and plug it in, 18 times tangent of 69, and I get 46.9. 46.9. Now, one last example. Oh, which angle do I pick? Well, I don't have an angle, but I'm going to go with the one that I'm looking for, because that's actually what I'm looking for is the angle this time. I'm going to label my opposite, my hypotenuse, and my adjacent. So at this point, I'm crossing out my adjacent because there's nothing by it. So what am I going to be using? So sine of, I don't know, I'm going to keep it a question mark, equals 12 over 30. Now this is a trick question. Where is my x? Is it in the top or the bottom? Trick question. I can't multiply or divide, so I'm going to have to hit my second key. So when x isn't in the fraction, you hit the second key. So I'm going to go second, and I chose sine, and I'm just going to type in the fraction like I see it. 12 divided by 30. I hit enter, and this time question mark is 23.58 degrees. So now that we've done those, let's look at what's next. Angles of elevation and angle of depression. So I drew some right triangles and I attached these nice long dotted lines so you can see what was going on. But my angle of elevation normally means that I'm looking up. Like an elevator, it goes up, elevation. Now when you're depressed, you look down. So what's so special about this dotted line and this horizontal down here? Well, they're parallel. And why is that important? Because this angle and this angle are congruent. With the angle of depression, same thing. So to me, that means anytime they give me an angle, I'm going to be putting it on the bottom of the triangle. So it helps me to know where to put it. So let's look at some word problems and see what we can do. You're going to probably have to draw pictures. I went ahead and I copied my picture from before. Once you draw your picture, let's think about this. It says an Air Force pilot must descend 1,500 feet over a distance of 9,000 feet to land smoothly on an aircraft carrier. What is the plane's angle of descent? So like I said before, we're always going to be putting our angle at the same spot. So now we got to figure out what all this stuff means. So over a distance of 9,000 feet is what we're looking at. So where does that 9,000 gonna go in respect to a plane and what's going on? I'm going to put it here because it's a distance of 9,000 feet. Now it's descending, he's going down 1,500 feet. That tells me he's going to be going down 1,500 feet. So now that I have my right triangle drawn, this turns into the same exact steps that we did before. I need to pick an acute angle. So there's my angle. Then I'm going to label, I have to label my opposite, my hypotenuse, and my adjacent. And which one has no information by it? My hypotenuse. So if I'm looking at TOA, I'm going to cross out the H. And so I know that I'm picking TOA. So tangent of what? What angle did I pick? I picked X equals opposite, which is 1500, over adjacent, which is 9,000. So here's the trick. Is my X in the bottom or is my X in the top of this fraction? I don't see an X. Trick question. So that means what do I have to do? I have to hit the second key. So once I hit my second key, let's go over and do it. I'm going to hit second, and I pick tangent of 1500 divided by 9,000. Oh, I put too many zeros, so I want to make sure I'm good. And when I hit enter, what do I get? 9.46 degrees. So let's look at our next example. Now this is tricky, and you can see I've already drawn two triangles, but even if I didn't draw these two triangles and I just had them off to the side, I can see, and I'm going to mark them, that I have this nice blue triangle. Don't mind me if I don't draw straight lines, I apologize. But I have this blue triangle right here, and then I also have this nice pink triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and separate these things again, and I'm going to go ahead and label as well. I'm going to make this one my pink one, and this one my blue one. Now I know these aren't drawn to scale, and that's okay. So let's look. I'm going to read the problem. A man is standing at point D. So here's my dude sitting here. Let's see what he's doing. He's watching a rocket take off 1,000 meters away, and they labeled it for us, which is really nice of them. So now that 1,000 is the same in both my blue triangle and my pink triangle. So after 2 seconds, the man looks up at an angle of elevation of 34 degrees and sees the rocket at point B. So here's my B in my blue triangle, and he's looking up at 34 degrees. After an additional 1 second, the rocket is at an angle of elevation of 39 degrees, and it's at point A. So it wants to know the distance between point A and point B, which I'm going to label in orange. It just wants to know this little piece. So if I'm going to actually set up an equation to try to figure it out later, what I do see is my pink is my longest. From A to C is my longest, right? I'm going to subtract my blue and when I subtract my blue, what am I going to get? My orange. Now I need to find out what those are. In my equation, in my triangles over here, I'm going to need my blue. I'm going to call that X. And I'm going to need my pink, which is, we'll call Y. So let's go through and do these problems like we've been doing all other trig problems. Step 1, I need to pick an angle. So I'm going to pick 34, and then I'm going to label my opposite, my hypotenuse, and my adjacent. I'm crossing out my hypotenuse, and if I'm looking at TOA, I crossed out my hypotenuse. So I'm using my tangent. So tangent of 34 equals x over 1,000. Now since x is in the top, I'm going to multiply. So x equals 1,000 tangent of 34. Now if I look at the next one, I'm going to pick 39. I'm going to label my opposite, my hypotenuse, and my adjacent. Crossing out my hypotenuse again, I'm still using tangent. This time, instead of tangent of 34, it's tangent of 39 equals opposite, which is not x, it's y over 1,000. And if I want to determine what y is, I'm going to multiply. Y equals 1,000 times tangent of 39. Now I could do all this in my calculator and get numbers, and I will, but I want to show you this. This is y, this is x. So I could just plug in what I have here. I could say 1,000 tangent of 39 minus 1,000 tangent of 34. Now when I do that in my calculator, I'm going to go ahead and clear this out, it's looking a little bit fun. I go 1,000 times tangent of 39 minus 1,000, oh, too many zeros again, times tangent of 34. And when I do that, I get 135.3 as my answer. That's what's going to go in my orange, and that's my final answer. So if I wanted to do each of these individually, I still could, just to show you. 1,000 times tangent of 39.
Teachers, pardon?
When I do that, I get 109.78. Now, when I do 1,000 times tangent of 34, I get 674.51. And I could just subtract them here. 809.78 minus 674.51. And what do I get? 135.3. I just like to do it all in one step because I can see it all in the calculator. It's a little quicker and I'm not rounding. So that's how you do trigonometry.